Oh, he's so charismatic. Come on. We all know the true north is not the same thing as magnetic north. I love people who get that joke. During North's trial, we found out that George Bush himself went to Honduras, promised the Honduran government we would expedite arms shipments to them if they would then ship on to El Salvador for us. Of course, George isn't worried. He's hanging out in the Oval Office going, impeach me. I'm sure Dan here is ready to say a quick prayer. And he's right, I know. I don't want little Bobby Brady running the country for the rest of the term. Let's face it, folks, if brains were gasoline, this guy couldn't pilot a moped halfway around a Fruit Loop. Listen, you guys have been great. I got to get out of here. I got to get downtown in time for that Parker Stevenson Film Festival. I guess I just want to thank you for watching my work. Maybe some night I'll come where you work and watch you. Good night.
Very good. Stay here. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.
Bad wardrobe choices. It's a pretty tight little set I was doing in my 20s there.
Yeah, I love the True North, Magnetic North joke.
That, so you'll know, that whole segment, I called it the Brody chronology. Someone had put together a chronology of the Iraq War. Might have been Mother Jones. I don't remember. Someone had put together a chronology. So I was calling that the Brody chronology. When I did it in clubs, that chronology said it had to run about, 14 minutes.
Right.
I went deeper on McFarlane, who took 12 or 14 Valium just so he could relax and remember all that important information. I had like 4 or 5 more jokes on that, and I don't remember any of them now. I had jokes on the guy who said he might have been under sedation before I got to him saying that he was under sedation. And then I had 3 or more tags on "It's a Party," selling guns to the enemy, selling guns to the enemy, giving the money to the it's a party. There were like 4 tags on that, I think, when I did it in clubs. And when I put together this set, I wanted to do that whole piece.
Right.
And had to cut out all the extraneous shit, just down to what is the news point that I want to hit on to make sure people remember this name and this piece of bullshit they've been fed. Like, I didn't have time to go through all the laughs and all the jokes, and I wanted to make sure that, and there were a couple of them, like one of the, is it Ed Meese that I mentioned in it?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Ed Meese, I was trying to remember what it was. Like, I might have missed 3 jokes while it was going past because I was trying to remember this. When I did it live, that piece, Ed Meese, there were 3 or 4 jokes on Ed Meese. I like and weird little throwaways in between them. Clearly the plural of moose. Like, there was a bunch of stuff. Like, there was just blah, 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 before I got, and it got a huge solid laugh and applause break at the very end. But it only got the laugh and applause break at the end because it had all this other shit in it that left sort of artifacts in the brain that fit together into this lovely conclusion that had no place in this set where I was trying to get certain things to be remembered.
Right.
So it's sort of heartbreaking for me that I have no record anywhere of those bits, the really at that time bits that I was doing on stage. There was a segment that was cut from this set that at the time, and remember, immediately the moment I got off stage, I got stoned.
Right.
However many weeks later, I then saw it on air. They didn't send me the thing. They didn't let me view it ahead of time. I didn't get when it came on air, I called them and I said, can I get a copy of the video? And they sent it to me, right? So I did not see it until it got on air. There was a piece cut from this set. And at the time, I was stoned and living deep in paranoia. The piece was, and I don't, remember all of it, but it was that the U.S. military, along with its military contractor, I believe Boeing, had unveiled stealth technology to be used potentially against our hated enemy, Iran, at that time. Possibly by our beloved allies, Iraq, at that time. But the news story was that they had just revealed this stealth aircraft, which I thought was stupid. That was my premise.
Right.
This is dumb. First, they announced that it shows up the size of a mosquito on Iranian radar. All aircraft show up about the size of a mosquito on any radar. You don't want it showing up full size. What's the point? Because it only shows up, we can fly in a squadron at night because they're painted black. Unnoticed, and wipe out huge swaths of the military. Because no one's going to think twice about 7 mosquitoes coming in at 30,000 feet in formation at hypersonic speeds. And they cut it. And it got laughs, and it got applause. And it was cut from the set, and I thought, oh my God, they got orders from the fucking military to take it out. And I don't want to get it wrong. I believe it was Colgate, but I'm pretty certain it was a toothpaste company. Years later, when I did another set, same director, in 94, 1 week after the big earthquake in Northridge, I flew to San Francisco and did a set with the same Doug Wellman, same director, now I believe a director-producer. And I asked him about it, and I said, did the military make you cut my mockery of their planes? And he said, no. It was someone from the toothpaste company. They got it. They're owned by the same people as the aircraft company. And they saw a cut at one point and said, can we get rid of that? So we had to put in 2 more of the fucking impressionists things. And I find that slightly more horrifying. that it's not censorship because they're trying to protect a military secret or even military morale. It's censorship to protect profits.
Now, you've been doing this like 31 years now, I guess?
I think it's more than that. I first went on stage in 1981. So that would be 31 years now? 41 years now?
41 years. Wow.
41 years.
Now, when you started though, I mean, because at some point, I guess, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but to make this from something you do to a career, you had to start making sacrifices, right? Or did you?
Oh, I did. I didn't really make them intentionally. I didn't plan to make them. I didn't know I was making them. But yes, I did.
Okay, so I was about to ask you, I was going to ask you, that was my next question. Did you consciously go, I need to sacrifice this so that I can go further? Or was it just a matter so you answered that saying it wasn't?
No, it wasn't even that ever. It was never even that. That's part of the issue, is that I never made sacrifices so that I could go further.
Okay. And it's because the reason why I wondered because
I made let me parse this for a minute, because this is important. I did make sacrifices, but they weren't so that I could go further. They were so that I could live in alignment with my conscience, even when I didn't know fully what it was telling me or why it was telling me that. I think this blog vodcast, this VOD blog, this vloggery that you and I are doing right here may be psychiatrically helpful to me. I think every sacrifice I made was so that I could live in alignment with my conscience, even when I didn't fully understand what my conscience was telling me or why it was telling me that. And sometimes I may have had other options for ways to live in alignment with my conscience and go further.
Right.
But if at the time I saw a binary choice between the thing that soothed my conscience and the thing that advanced my career, I did the thing that kept me in line with my conscience.
Okay.
And that's kind of what all the punching upward was about too, when it was inappropriate. Like, you don't need to attack the club you're working in. You don't
Right.
need to make fun of the club owner
Right.
when you're off stage talking to him. You don't need to. At a pitch session for Funny or Die when I was in my 50s, like I was not that much younger than I am now. A young man confessed that he had not looked at any of the pitch materials or video they had had in their hands for the 6 months that they had been postponing the meeting.
Okay.
So I stood up and walked around the table and swatted him in the back of the head the way my master does to me, because it's hilarious. But the look in his eye as he said, "Well, that's never happening again," made it very clear to me that what I had done to satisfy my conscience's need for expression and my spectrumy need to finish shaving a haircut if I hear shaving a haircut,
Right.
which happens to me constantly because I look for setup in everything I hear. And in this case, I knew that the sight gag was funny. It didn't matter that there was no audience. There's an unseen audience that has to get the joke. I've since learned that that's just a nervous tick and I can control it if I want to. Not everybody is as forgiving as I like to imagine them to be of my need to be funny at random in public or in private when I hear a setup, right? You wouldn't know it from this interview, but but now we're talking about the thing that my spectrumy self really knows stuff about, right? When I
Right.
get interested in something, I burrow into it and the jokes and how they structure out and how they fit together into a set. This is the most interesting stuff for me. When I started, I was not funny.
And you said that before. What changed? What changed that make you? How should I put it? What changed? What was the thing? What was the catalyst that made you from not being funny to being funny?
Well, it was incremental growth, despite, and this is part of the real sacrifice I made, intense, repeated emotional pain. Because I knew I wanted to do a thing. Well, I knew I wanted to do it well. And at the same time, I was making it very, very difficult for myself because I had mislearned something about what it means to do something well. So, as is the case with me, I will be telling you a story, G.D. Fenderson.
Okay.
When I was a child in Schuylerville, New York, far upstate, where the snow falls onto frozen ponds. My father at Skidmore College in the early 70s was one of the first people in America, one of the first people in the world to teach cinema as literature, as an art form, to teach it at the university level. So every semester, he would teach the history of film, starting from silent comedies, maybe a silent melodrama, through a Marx Brothers film, the early comedies, then into the screwball comedies of the 30s, up through the 40s with something noir, and the 50s was always somewhere in the 30s and 40s would always be a Fred Astaire musical, because my mother loved them and she
Right.
hadn't seen them since childhood. There were no VHS tapes then.
Right.
So each week a new hexagonal box, huge, would come up from New York by UPS. And my dad would bring home a 35 millimeter projector from school and set it up in our living room. And on Wednesday evening, he would watch the film with the family so that he could then have seen it already when he took it in the next day to show it to the kids, and they would dissect it. What is being said in this film? What does the hero choose in this film? What are the decisions made in this film? How is it structured? What is the underlying message? All of that stuff that you do when you're learning to critically assess art.
Right.
And then after we watched it, I get to eavesdrop on his conversation with my mom, where he got all his thoughts in order and stole all of her thoughts so that he could sound really coherent about having just seen the film and having all these thoughts on it the next day. And one of the films we saw every year, the comedies I loved, I watched any of the comedies, and Buster Keaton cracked me up. And I said, I think I could do that. And my dad said, I think I was 9. And my dad said, the mark of the great artist is that he makes it look effortless. Now, when you're 9, the nuance of the difference between the way something looks and the way it is a little bit muddy. And part of the perpetual stonedness of my early career as a writer and as a performer, and my broadcasting constantly of my general stonedness, was that I was proving how easy how effortless everything was for me. And the punching upward at the people who could offer me money was spitting in the face of capitalism. I was a comic regardless of the money.
Right.
Right. As a writer, people would ask me for a rough draft, and I'd spit it out as fast as I possibly could and put it across their desk to show them how effortless this is for me.
Right.
When it might have really served me to spend another 2 weeks just looking at it, having a couple of people look at it, getting some feedback on what I might strengthen about it, and maybe doing a second draft. It was a pain in the ass to do that. You were writing on a typewriter, and besides, I wanted to make it look effortless. So I kept trying to make things look effortless and trying to prove how little effort I was putting in. It wasn't until years later when I became a storyteller, sort of accidentally, after studying martial arts, that I was able to come back into the world of performance and blurt out to my wife, I don't care how hard I have to work on these stories, I want to make them look effortless. Oh, that's what he was talking about. And suddenly the cognitive discrepancy between making it look effortless and making it effortless became clear to me. And that was because I'd been doing martial arts. I'd spoken way less pot at that point, and I'd started meditating. And meditation is the time that your brain has, without direction, without effort, to uproot and unearth and re-examine the core beliefs that we don't know we've taken on, that are so much part of our being that we can't notice that what we learned as a child was wrong.
You was talking about the martial arts, and well, actually, forget that. Well, yeah, I'm gonna mention it anyway, because if I'm wrong, you can correct me. But with
That's
martial arts, when you got your master belt, okay,
You know,
before you
you can
got the
put that in
belt,
quotation marks. It's a legitimate belt. It doesn't
okay, when you
deserve to
got
be.
your master
I
belt,
am a master, yes.
yes, you learned the lessons that it required to become a master, even without the belt. So if they never gave you that belt, you would have those skills as a master.
That is correct.
So does it did the belt did the belt matter to you in that
Have
regard?
have
Because
you
you
not heard this
you really
story,
know
or
it.
are you deliberately segueing into a story of mine, or have you not heard this story?
I have not heard that story.
Oh, GD, this is one of the key stories that I tell all the time with I coach writers. Um, and occasionally I coach martial artists, and I instruct martial artists, have instructed martial artists through to black belts from time to time, never beyond that. I'm not comfortable teaching people further into degrees. I want them at a studio working with the structure of um the culture of a studio. But all right. Allow me to have the floor for a moment, as if I don't do that too often already.
Okay.
Everybody overvalues his or her accomplishments, overvalues his or her perceived flaws and failures, and undervalues his or her accomplishments. Everybody. The day that I tested to become a master, well, the weekend, the test to become a master was a 2-day weekend, long test. I was testing both for my fourth Dan black belt in Taekwondo, which is the level at which in the US generally one can apply to be a master. I was also testing for my third Dan black belt in my third Dan black belt in Hapkido, and for a color advancement, already a black belt in Kigumdo, which is a sword style. So I had to demonstrate all my technique, right? Each test is cumulative. You show all the specific technique you've learned up to that time. So at that point, we're up to 20, I'm going to say 26 empty hand techniques and 3 staff, empty hand forms and 3 staff forms. Or what you think of as kata in Korean, it's pumse. 12 sword forms, nunchucks, and then also all the Hapkido balance and gripping and throwing techniques, all the self-defense techniques, all the street defense offense techniques, all the advanced self-defense techniques from the Hapkido line of stuff, all the kicking techniques and the punching techniques from the Taekwondo line, all the falling techniques, all the separate sword techniques, had to put out candles with swords and do all sorts of weird fucking esoteric, yes, you know the trick of that and you can do it well, good enough stuff. And it's all just, a lot of that stuff really is, there's a trick to that, and once you've learned it and practiced it and you can do it consistently, you can do it and it's cool. But it's not indicative of anything particular. And afterwards I had to, and then, there was also all the sparring. I had to spar kendo style with the swords, and Olympic style one-on-one with a black belt, and then Olympic style rules against 3 black belts, and then no rules at all, but full padding against 4 adorable teen and 20-year-old black belts. And then I had to write a 2-page essay, and I'd done all this stuff, and break bricks. Oh, you have to break boards and break bricks in various ways. You can find video of me breaking a stack of 10 bricks online. It's a lovely thing. I did it at a tournament to show off. And then the next day they gave me a belt. Well, later that week they gave me the belt, and I felt silly because now I had the master's belt that says master on it, and they were all calling me Sabunim. instead of Sambanim, and they were calling me Master Dylan, and I didn't know anything now that I had not known the day before. But as a result, I did not feel quite worthy of the belt.
Okay.
But their respect began to change the way I comported myself in the studio. Because now they treat me differently. The ways you treat a master are slightly different. And that begins to change my confidence and my self-awareness. And because we are taught to be self-deprecating and never prideful, and always to overvalue our shortcomings and undervalue our accomplishments, my sense of confidence and accomplishment, I did not know, really until just now, was slightly undermined every time one of them called me Sabanim or Master Dylan. And then I was hired to do some work at MIT. I say that and then I let it hang there for gravitas because it sounds better than I took a nepotistic gig honoring my father on the East Coast. I was hired first by MIT to roast my father when the Council for the Arts was out here and he was leading the Council for the Arts. And then they hired me on this occasion to go to the East Coast and host a big fundraising event and party as he stepped down as Associate Provost for the Arts at MIT, or as most people pronounce it, Arts at MIT, and went back to being a professor teaching theater there, which theater at MIT. And I went back to host this event. And I was funny and it was wonderful. I wrote 20 minutes of MIT specific jokes that I'm not going to do for you now. And then afterwards, there was an academic party where they served scotch in little plastic cups that cut your lips. And I was sipping bad scotch out of a painful cup. And a little man approached me and said, "Oh, that was funny. How did you do that? That was genius. That was wonderful." And it really was pretty good. You know, I did jokes at the top. I emceed well. And then I closed with improv in the style of Mamet, Shakespeare, and my father, who was a playwright. And it impressed the hell out of me. And my father saw us talking and rushed over and said, "This is someone I wanted you to meet. This is Alan Guth." And I said, "Oh, hi, Alan Guth. I'm Dylan Brody." And my father said, "I think he's going to win a Nobel Prize in astrophysics in the next year or two." And I said, "Really?" Because I did 12 minutes of jokes and he said I was brilliant. And my father said, "Alan is the man who discovered that the universe is expanding." And Alan leaned toward me, and in a tone far more confessional than conspiratorial, he said, "I didn't discover it. I just proved it mathematically." And it began to dawn on me that we overvalue our own perceived shortcomings and undervalue our own accomplishments. Now, as a druid in training, I have come to learn that as students in anything, we take what is useful and we throw away what to us is not useful. And we bring to the game what is uniquely ours. It's how I run my workshops, because I do workshops for writers and humorists and all sorts of stuff. And my goal is always to turn on other people's epigenetic switches for productivity so they can find their process.
I'm
right?
G.D. Fenderson, certified forensic humorist and co-host of Done Way Past Funny. You have just watched part 3 of our 3-part interview with Dylan Brody. My interview with Dylan Brody lasted a little over 2.5 hours. We're going to share the rest of our interview with you as bonus episodes in the near future. In the meantime, if you should happen to see my co-host, Sugar Ray, point him towards San Antonio, pat him on the head, and send him home. The airport is about to charge him rent.